The reading, they've had their bath, they've had the milk and everything, and they still won't settle. So it's a case like, what do you do now? And I know it's last thing at night. You don't want to shout. I don't want to shout, but sometimes there's a little bit of shouting, and giving them. If they don't stop and settle down, there might be time out. After I've shouted and settled, or next day, I always explain why I shouted and what the reasons were, just to make sure that they understand it's not an everyday, all the time occurrence, but sometime in life I need to do this.
Jenny, I presume you were sympathetic with Manjit.
Yes, although I wonder why it's such a big deal, really, because it strikes me that people now talk about shouting often as a discipline technique. I'm not sure it is that. I think sometimes people are sometimes they behave unreasonably. Sometimes actually the kids are behaving unreasonably. Sometimes it's just something that you do. And I think it's part and parcel of the fabric of family life. And I think it's interesting that now, shouting like smacking and time out and naughty step, all of these things have become things that you're only supposed to use very, very deliberately. And then you're supposed to feel very guilty about it afterwards, rather than just saying, well, what's a bit of noise between friends or within a family?
Stephen, Manjit is clearly thinking about why he's shouting and feeling guilty about it, but he does feel it's part of life and unavoidable. We'll come back to alternatives, but do parents, in your experience, really worry about shouting?
Yeah, but I think, as Jenny says, it's a matter of degree, isn't it? I think a little bit of shouting now and again is quite important, actually. I think if you were super Mr. or Ms. Cool as a parent, that's not really preparing children for outside world. People do have passions and emotions. People do get upset and do get angry. If your children never see that, that's not going to be helpful. You read on someone's face. It's a way of showing you mean business. If it gets too bad and then, oh, you did that, you're getting these horrible cycles of getting back at each other, then that can really destroy a relationship.
Sue, do you agree? I mean, would you worry more if there was no shouting, no kind of engagement on that sort of emotional level?
Yeah, in a way I do agree, actually, but I think we do need to clarify the different kinds of shouting. That there is shouting which is sort of an explosion of frustration, which everybody does, or there's shouting to sort of make your point forcefully, perhaps. But then there is shouting which veers over into the abusive, basically when the parent loses control in a more extreme way, and when the parent vents their own feelings onto the child. So they basically dump on the child and say, you're this, you're that, you're the other. And that can start going in a very wrong direction.
But what about if they sort of pull back and try and explain it later? I mean, Stephen Manjit said there that he goes back to his children to explain why he shouted. I mean, is that better, or does it make it even more confusing? Do young children understand why parents shout at them, do you think?
Well, an apology is always welcome, isn't it? But I rather agree with Sue. Once it gets to the level that is frightening and rather overwhelming for a child, and you can see some children literally shake, you stupid so-and-so, this is very destructive, and all the research is quite clear. Once you get to that anger, that tone, that hostility, it is very destructive to children. So I suppose it's better to say sorry afterwards, but it's better to find other ways of showing you mean business without shouting that often, that loud.
For me, really, the issue is about context. It's a bit like the way that the experiences of Romanian orphans often use the example of what's wrong with daycare. Incomparable situations. And it is very clear, when you see these horrible cases, Victoria Columbier, Baby P, these are very, very clear and absolutely horrific cases. But what you have is a situation where that's taken as the starting point and things are treated as some kind of continuum. So if you shout at your child one day, next thing you know, you'll end up with a Baby P situation on your hands. And I think this has been really kind of absorbed by parents. They've become very, very anxious and very self-conscious about every little thing that they do. And so I suppose my concern is really that we kind of say, look, there is life, and life is not perfect, and life is not about parenting practices. It's just life, and there's many kind of tensions and pressures, and sometimes you get out the wrong side of the bed. Sometimes your kids get out the wrong side of the bed, But good days and bad days, but we can cope with that. That's all fine. Rather than sort of treating it all as we're in a kind of potentially abusive situation here. I think there is a case for being spontaneous and natural within a family.
I mean, Sue Gerhardt, plainly Manjit shouted please to put shoes on and go to the toilet don't add up to sustained and serious parental abuse. But you've pulled together research, the research that the impact on young children's brains of negative parenting can have. Can you say a bit about that?
Just taking Jenny up on the last point, I think often what comes naturally is the way that we were parented ourselves. And, actually we can learn from science to do things differently if